What's up, guys? Welcome to the Mash and Drum Whiskey Room. I am Jason C. What is up, everybody, on this Wednesday night? It's Chattanooga night. We're going to be hanging out with a very special guest, talking Chattanooga whiskey and all the great things that they are creating, plus take a little bit of a deep dive on their ridiculously amazing story on how they got started, which is pretty rock and roll. And actually, I say that because, you know, our special guest actually was a musician. So, still is, obviously, but we're going to be getting into the whole history of everything and talking about Chattanooga, what they got coming up, what's in the future. And of course, we'll be sipping some Chattanooga all right here. Let's say hi to everybody in the chat real quick first. I see already talking to a bunch of people in the chat room, chatting about Chattanooga. No pun, well, pun actually intended there. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people are big fans of what Chattanooga is doing. A lot of people are just, I've gotten more messages today about, you know, have you tried one of their single barrels yet? They're single barrels. You have to have one of them. They're amazing. And I got one right here, which I haven't cracked open yet. So we're going to get into this tonight once we get a little bit further into the show. So in a little bit, I'm going to be bringing on special guest Tim Piersant, who is one of the co-founders and also the CEO of Chattanooga Whiskey. And we'll talk to him about the history of it, learn all things. We'll, save some time for you guys to send in some questions. If you want to get a question in right away, throw in a super chat and I'll get your question in as soon as I can. But right off the bat, Mark JG was here nice and early. Adam Shelton was here. Andrew Buchanan, Tyler Mills, Sugar Kitty was here. What's up? Mike Meyer was here. Keith Schmidt hanging out. Josh Pence, the Sweet Tea, Whiskey Drover. What is up, buddy? Doug Petty's here. Cheech Artolino, nice to have you in, sir. Let's see what else we got going on here. Karen B. Ford is here. She lives in Tennessee. She was very excited for the show. Jeff Perkins is in the house. What's up, buddy? Kevin C. is here. Kilco, of course. Destination Bourbon. That's right. It's prime time. Michael Klein. Go check him out, guys. We had a great live stream last night. Went off the rails talking about cereal. We went from beer to cereal. It was glorious. Richie Z is here. Whiskey. Let's see. Will Henderson is here. Want to thank Will Henderson for finding me this bottle of Chattanooga Rye, which I'm not able to get here in Ohio yet, but I'm excited to try it here tonight as well. Daily Bourbon Drinkers in the house. Let's see who else we got here. Christopher David, of course. Always nice to see you, buddy. Mike Franklin, James SoCal. What's up, buddy? Let's see here. DMCKY is in the chat as well. So DMCKY, want to mention real quick, just started his own YouTube channel. So if anybody's watching, go check out DMC KY. Richie Z or any of the mods in there, if any of you guys want to grab a link to his channel and post it in the chat, feel free to do so, DMC. Everyone can go check it out. Jeffrey Rollins is here. Let's see, Josh Randall. I Hate Weed Whackers. What's up, buddy? Ernie Brubaker, Donald Rance, my Irish Whiskey Yoda, and a bunch more coming in saying hi. Emily Chambers, of course. All right, without further ado, we're going to bring on our special guest to say hi, and we'll start talking some Chattanooga. And here he is, folks. Say hi to Tim Piersant. How you doing, buddy?
Good, man. Thanks for having me on, Jason. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so I don't know why, but you're just looking at you. It makes me feel cold.
It's right around freezing at the moment, but this is my spot. Like I've got a couple kids inside, and my wife's probably putting them down at the moment, and I'm this is my front porch. I like it out here. I haven't experienced it at freezing temps yet, but it's quite nice.
So
my lips might be numb by the end of this. Might not be able to understand what I'm saying.
I was just gonna say, you might have to tell us the whole story right now before you freeze.
Yeah, right. Like Kith and Kin. I've got some, I'm gonna turn into Christmas Vacation looking for my tree out in the forest.
We're gonna have to have one of the kids bring out you some hot chocolate in a second or so.
They're about that age, man, where they can start doing some pretty cool chores and favors. They just are also at the age where they choose not to.
So they could be helpful, but they choose not to. Yeah, fair enough.
Plenty of attitude in this house to go around. Plenty of attitude.
So for those of you that don't, know who you are exactly, kind of go into who you are, a little bit about, your history with Chattanooga and, what you guys are doing right now.
Yeah, man. So, well, right now we are, planning for 2021. It's been, 2020 was, every year there's just something. We're in our 10th year, like officially in our 10th year. So we'll be celebrating our 10th anniversary in October of 2021. And so while it seems like that's a lot of time from like a craft distillery, craft bourbon perspective, considering how much has happened since 2011 in history, it's also not a lot of time when you think about, A, just everything that's happened, and B, all the distilleries that have been around for 100, 150 years, right? So, so I say that because it seems like every year, like there's some major milestone that happens. And so 2020 for us, aside from the fact that it was a very unique year with a pandemic, it was our first full year of selling Chattanooga Whiskey 91 and 111. So it was our first full year of our flagship products being 100%, Chattanooga made versus where we originally got our stuff from, which was Lawrenceburg, Indiana. We obviously started coming out with our stuff we started distilling our own stuff in 2015. We started coming out with our own distillate, or aged distillate that was 100% Chat made out of the experimental distillery in late 2017. But it's all been leading up to 91 and 111. It's all been leading up to the official launch of Tennessee High-Malt, which we launched in August of 2019. But we didn't even have half a year under our belt, and so to have a full year of 91 and 111, and then the launch of 99 Rye, which is going to be a permanent SKU, albeit small. It's pretty limited, but it's still we call it kind of a permanent with our shelf set.
Yeah.
And now we're planning for 2021. We expanded into quite a few markets this year. And we'll probably stay put for next year. So we really don't plan on expanding into many more markets next year because we really don't want to go too wide. So right now, we expanded into the Midwest with Ohio and Illinois. Mm-hmm. And then, we expanded our furthest west market is Colorado. So we hit Colorado before the pandemic. We hit Texas right at the beginning of the pandemic. We launched Florida last year. And so anyways, we're going to stay put and drive deep, and we're going to launch a couple of new products next year, which we're really excited about. And in the meantime, we're always coming out with cool experimentals that are, it's local, but if you can make it here, it's they're awesome to explore and quite unique. So, and they're all part of the road, right? I mean, yeah, I don't know what barrel you have experimental, but so I'm sipping on barrel 78. Barrel number 78 was part of the road to Tennessee High-Malt. So they all have a purpose in our history.
I have 104. Yeah.
So that was, the 104th barrel distilled at the experimental distillery. And so, yeah, they all have a special place, and in the road that became Chattanooga Whiskey 91 and Chattanooga Whiskey 111.
So, so one could say the last few years, I mean, you guys went from, and we'll get into the story of not being able to distill not being able to distill anything to now you're not only you're expanding, but you're looking to get more into your experimentals, release some new products, and continue to mature, the stuff that you have now. But before then, and we're talking 2011 that's pretty. So that's 100 years. So 2011 was a pretty special year for you guys because that was 100 years, since the first legal distillery was ever allowed in Chattanooga. Correct?
Yeah. So technically, so when we launched, so we built the first distillery in Chattanooga in 2015, and 2015 was exactly 100 years when the last distillery shut down.
Okay.
So pre-Prohibition, Chattanooga was one of the larger distilling communities in North America from 1866 to 1915. Tennessee was one of those states that was kind of before everything. It was on the front end of the prohibition, so
Yeah.
obviously nationwide, it set in 1920. Tennessee, it set in 1915. So in 1915, that was the last distillery that shut down. There were once over 30 distilleries in downtown Chattanooga, and that's why we call it Chattanooga whiskey, to really encompass everything that was once here.
Yep.
So so my co-founder and I's mission was to bring that back. And we did. When we decided we wanted to bring it back, we truly wanted to be the first to distill and have the first distillery in Chattanooga in a century. So that was our mission from the very beginning. But we really didn't know or understand the depths of the laws that stood in our way, which we thought maybe was just local, but it turned out to be state. And so what followed was a pretty significant grassroots lobbying effort, just really from he and I, and just having conversations with the city and trying to galvanize as much support. And
did you guys realize that at what point did you find out that, in those late 1600s, like not 16, the late 1800s, like 60-ish to the 1900,
yeah.
Chattanooga was a distilling hub, and I had no clue until I did the research about Chattanooga whiskey.
Yeah.
At what point did you guys find that out?
So this is actually one of these parts of the story that's like the devil's in the details, but we don't necessarily talk about, because we can't talk about everything,
Yeah.
But, I mean, I'm happy to talk about everything. I'm just saying, in order for people to be able to connect with the story, it's like, all right, how many details can you possibly put in to a story? But to answer,
I love these geeky details.
Well, but the answer is kind of funny. So the way that when we discovered the history of whiskey in Chattanooga, it was through a pre-prohibition website that we found that all had official documentation. So you could look at every real, say real, but everything was documented online. You could see, all of the they had DSPs listed, they had addresses listed, they had all that stuff listed. So we found that, and so that was in October of 2011. Within 24 hours, we posted a Facebook page, a Chattanooga Whiskey Facebook page.
Okay.
And when we woke up the next morning, we had hundreds of people in our community that had followed it and started asking where they could buy it. And it wasn't even a 24-hour plan. It was like, oh my God, can you believe that this existed in Chattanooga? And it's like, we got to do something. We got to bring this back. We got to, where do we go? And it's like, Facebook. We go to Facebook. That's like, and so we go to Facebook. Remember Facebook, it didn't have all the algorithms that it has now. So when you posted something, people could freely share it and everybody could see it. And it was like an open dialogue, right? So we posted, and then all of a sudden, within a couple of days, our local news stations are calling us. They're like, hey, we want to do an interview on you guys about, Chattanooga whiskey. And we're like, okay. And we literally go in front of them. And I mean, we had nothing. We had no plan. So no product. So anyways, we quickly start figuring out what we have to do to put it together. And that's when we started reaching out to distilleries to find out who was doing, contract manufacturing, which, by the way, in 2011, there were not a lot of contract manufacturers. But
in 2011, that whole social media campaign is really what allowed you to kind of kickstart your vision, correct?
Totally. Yeah. It was the timing of that.
Mm-hmm.
From launching an idea and getting real organic response, and just having a community conversation, and it being kind of unfiltered. It was the perfect time for that on social media, that is, on Facebook. And so if without it, and then when we when we started digging into the laws, because I mean, we launched this thing before we even really knew it was illegal. So then we quickly found out it was illegal, and it was like, all right, well, we're gonna power through this. So no big deal. Of course, we had some people reach out and be like, no, you'll never power through it. You're talking about a century-old law. We're talking about old school legislators. They'll never want to bring back intoxicating, or manufacturing of intoxicating liquors back to Chattanooga. So you've got a major fight in front of you. And that's kind of when we decided that we had to get creative with our campaign. And that's when we started the Vote Whiskey campaign. And we felt like that was going to be a campaign that was going to be loud enough to really raise awareness and make people ask questions and really get the community behind it, so that we kind of so it really wasn't up to the legislators. It was really, legislators were looking at a packed a packed courthouse of hundreds of local citizens with a 99.9% support of Chattanooga whiskey distilling in Chattanooga again in 100 years. So.
Yeah, that whole story was insane. And the fact that you guys, now this was the thing that blew me away. You guys founded a company in a city that you're not allowed to distill anything. Now, if somebody gave me that business plan and said, look, we're going to build a distillery, but you can't make anything, I'm not sure if I would be on board for that. I mean, how much convincing did that take for your investors?
Well, so when it comes to, there's a couple things, right? So investors kind of came later, although we did mezz debt in the beginning to get started, and I can dig into that too. But yeah, remember in 2011, we were only a few years, only a couple of years coming out of the recession.
Yeah.
And so there was still, I mean, when you presented, building a business that brought jobs to Chattanooga, it's pretty hard to turn a blind eye to that.
True.
And so what's pretty cool is, although between that time period, that we lobbied from 2011 until 2013, but we had a vote locally that was as early as November of 2012, which I know is confusing because we ended up having to change state laws. So why would we have a vote locally? And I can get into that too. But
were you as surprised as, so back in 2009, and like you said, coming out of the recession, Chattanooga allowed what, 40 some odd, craft distilleries to open up in certain counties.
Right.
But it still didn't include Hamilton County, which is where Chattanooga is. Was there a reason why, or there was just more work to be, or was there just more work to be done?
Yeah. So the first distilling craft bill was introduced in 2009, and it was really a combination of an effort of a couple of distilleries, one in Nashville and one in Gatlinburg, and but so where the difference between that bill and our bill is that in 2009. It was, we have 95 counties in Tennessee. So it was up to the legislators of each one of those counties to opt in or not, opt in or opt out, or rather just opt in. And in the majority of the state of Tennessee, the majority of those legislators did not opt in. So Hamilton County did not opt in 2009. So that left us in with the prohibition that dated all the way back to 1915. And there was one particular legislator here that was not, he was hard. He was probably the hardest core against it. So we knew we had that mountain to climb as well. Wow. And he was still in the Tennessee General Assembly, several years later, and was still, and was ready to fight us. So anyways, what our bill said is that if you could drink liquor by the drink and you could buy it in package retail sales, then you could also get a license to distill. And it was really that simple. There were some distance requirements in there between distilleries that we had some amendments on, and now you've got some distilleries that are a little closer to other distilleries. And I mean, but it was really that bill that opened up the rest of the state. And it's really made it fair. And then distilleries poured in Tennessee chain. I mean, it went from less than 5 distilleries to over 30 distilleries. So
it really kind of kicked off the craft distilling movement, back then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it did. But yeah, man, I mean, I'll say this back to the investor thing. Like investors, we were talking to people, but it was so early and it was so new. We knew we wanted to make a straight bourbon whiskey, but we really couldn't even like get there. It was more about what we could buy, what we could source, and what we could sell, right? So we really built a pro forma that stated like, all right, we're gonna package our stuff together. We're gonna source this bourbon. We're gonna build it up to this many cases. We're gonna make this much money. Then we're gonna build a distillery, and then we're gonna start putting stuff away. So then it takes another 4 years after that, and we had this plan of how are we going to do this. Of course, really nothing went according to plan, which is not surprising, obviously. But we were starting off by we were buying 20 barrels at a time from Lawrenceburg distillers.
Yeah, so that's the old LDL before, but
LDI,
which became MGP.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
So back then, all we could afford was buy we got a $50,000 of mezzanine debt to be able to package up 20 barrels worth of product. We designed our label. We designed Chattanooga Whiskey. It said 1816 on it at the time. And we came out with a 90 proof reserve, and we came out with a 113.6 proof cask. And those two products, they were the same recipe. They were 3.5. It was at the time they were distilled and barreled in 2008. So now this is 2012. And so this product, it was a 3-grain straight bourbon whiskey, 75% corn, 21% rye, and 4% malted barley, which is they only have a couple of real classic recipes.
Yeah.
So that was one of them. And dude, it was a really good bourbon, and so we were like, sweet, we're going to start off with a really good between 3 and 4 year old bourbon. And, this is going to be our foundation. And then eventually, we'll get these laws changed, and then we'll start, making something just like this. Of course, we didn't make anything just like that. And that's where a lot of the plans changed.
Yeah, of course. Real quick, I want to say thanks to Rod's Wood Turning Shop and stuff. Hope you're enjoying your retirement, buddy. He said, is batch 92 the source of 91 and 111?
He might mean, I don't know if he means batch 91, the source of 91 and not quite sure, but 90. So barrel 91 out of the experimental distillery is what was the inspiration behind 91 and 111. So when we from 2015, we established experimental distillery in 2015, and from 2015 to 2017, we put away over 100 different recipes in our barrel cellar, which is underground at the Chattanooga Whiskey Experimental Distillery. And when we brought Grant McCracken on before we built the experimental distillery, our head distiller, Grant, brought his knowledge of fermentations and specialty malts and yeast and everything from being a brewer. And so we decided that we wanted to pursue a high specialty malt straight bourbon whiskey. And because the system is so small at experimental, it's a 100-gallon pot still.
Okay. I love that it's a pot still, because I love the types of whiskey pot stills create. Yeah, and there's a wild difference between different systems, man. Difference between a pot still systems and between column still systems, and we have them both, so we know. I mean, 91 came off of a pot still, and now 91 comes off of a column with a pot doubler. So, and by the way, I'm not sure there's a more badass name for a distiller than Grant McCracken.
That's a pretty badass name, and Grant is he lives up to his name. I can tell you that. So.
Like I feel like there should be a poster with like you, Joe, Grant on the front, like an old Beastie Boys License to Ill cover, but just say License to Distill, and just have the Chattanooga logo in the background.
Well, so dude, part of the story, and we don't advertise this, but like part of the story is, Joe's been out of the business since 2014. So
has he? Oh, okay.
Yeah. So there was a co-founder split, and then we kind of had to that was after the laws changed and all, and so it was a pretty big deal. And then we kind of had to hit the reset button to determine how we were going to move forward. And that's where the story, that obviously the part of the story that we don't talk about much, but it was a big deal to go from he and I changing laws, starting this company with this vision, and then we split, and then resetting determining how we were going to move forward. And then one of our first hires right after that was Grant. And Grant came from Boston. And what Grant loved about Chattanooga Whiskey was that we had this foundation of trailblazing, like changing laws, right? Like law changing was our foundation.
Yeah, breaking laws. I mean,
right.
That's old outlaw whiskey shit. I mean,
so he came in and said, like, how do we continue this, right? Like, let's not do the same recipe as LDI, right? Let's not do this 3-grain recipe, and let's bring in specialty malts. And so from 2015 to 2017, man, we made over 100 different recipes. We used over 100 different specialty malts. We used over 30 different yeasts. And by the end of 27 or into 2017, when we established the Riverfront Distillery, we had over 100 barrels to choose from. And barrel number 91, it was a pretty in-depth selection process by the team. Barrel 91 was the winner. So,
but I mean, when you go back to those barrels, those MGP, that the 1816 you released from LDI, what was the reaction? Because your whole story was based on bringing Chattanooga whiskey back to Chattanooga, and okay, here's a whiskey, but we made it in Indiana. So how was that? How did the public kind of take to that? Did they see it as, okay, this could be cool, but we want to taste your stuff?
I mean, so that was where the Vote Whiskey campaign was so critical, because we needed people to know that is why we were doing what we were doing. And very early on, you got to scroll back a long way on Facebook, and it takes a long time to scroll.
Okay.
But if you scroll all the way down to the beginning, I mean, dude, I'll sometimes, if I just want to reminisce, I'll start scrolling, and I'm like been scrolling for an hour, and I'm like, yeah. So anyways, we scroll down to scroll back to the beginning, and this is, I mean, I say this is like for transparency. The transparency was kind of groundbreaking, because back, it was I don't know when, like, some of the brands were getting sued for false advertisement. I can't remember when all that was happening, but so anyways, around that time we were like, yeah, we got to let people know that our mission is to build a distillery. So we got to let them know, from the very beginning, we tried to be as transparent as possible about sourcing. So we actually took a picture of the bottle that says distilled in Indiana, and we circled it in red, with a huge red marker, and we posted it. Like, we circled the distilled Chattanooga whiskey distilled in Indiana, and we posted that like on the screen, and people went nuts. They were like, "This shit isn't made here? Are you?" We were like, "You've been trying to say that the whole time.
It was really good. What the hell?"
We were trying. We were like, dude, we've been saying it every single day. You guys aren't listening. We need your help. So yeah, no. So to answer your question, mixed emotions. But once we got the Vote Whiskey campaign rolling and got in front of the courthouse, that's when we felt the love. We felt like we were going to be successful.
Yeah, so 2013, the whiskey bill, the noted whiskey bill passes.
Yep.
You guys get your license to ill, license to ill, whatever you want to call it. And then 2014, you meet the myth, the man, the legend, Grant McCracken. How did you guys, and how was that for you? I mean, you guys talked about, breaking laws, breaking whiskey. How did you even find him, with him being in Boston?
So
he does have a craft beer background, correct?
Right. Yeah. So for like your bourbon, aficionados or connoisseurs that really like dig into, the history of LDI, you will remember a name or know of a name, Larry Ebersold. And Larry was before Greg Metz. So Larry developed
Larry the legend, man. He was the other legend instead of Bird.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Larry Bird and Larry Ebersold.
That's right.
So Larry and my co-founder and Larry got super tight, because we were talking about, like, we were buying from his product. So we went up to LDI and we toured and we hung out with some legends at LDI. back in 2011. And so we got to know Larry, and he retired when MGP bought LDI, and he started doing consulting. So we brought him in to be our distillery consultant. So then my co-founder and I split, and then we decided to do something much, much smaller, which was the Chattanooga Whiskey Experimental, which, by the way, was a hard decision. We had this huge vision. We were going to build this big distillery, and then to basically scale it down by 30 times down to this, micro distillery was a really, really hard decision, but it was the best decision we ever made. But anyways, Larry, we had developed a system, and we really loved the juice that LDI was putting out. So we wanted to do basically a scaled down version of theirs.
Okay.
And so he helped us develop that on paper. And we got a contract with Vendome, and we had a contract with Vendome that goes back to the very beginning of Chattanooga Whiskey. And then we had to put it on hold. And so they had it on hold from 2012 until 2017 when we started building 16 when we started building Riverfront, which is crazy, which is another crazy story. They literally had all of our materials. They had our still half built for 5 years.
I was just going to say, you gotta invest some money for them to even hold it like that, correct?
Well, we had our first equity round in 2013, right after we changed the laws, and that was to build the distillery. And so we ended up going a different direction and building something much, much smaller. So, anyways, Larry, I called Larry up when. I guess, when was this? Now I'm losing my track of time. But regardless, Larry starts building New Riff, or consulting with on the New Riff.
Yep.
And he says, you guys got to come up here, check this out, because this is your system that they're building. So we go up there, and they introduce us to their head distiller, Brian Sprance. And Brian is like, dude, who's going to be a distiller? And we're like, we don't know yet. We're still actually trying to figure that out. And he's like, well, I got the perfect guy for you. He was my colleague at Boston Beer. He's like, you got to call him up. So I called Grant up. We did a couple of phone interviews. I flew him down to a beer festival here in Chattanooga in early 2014, I guess, summer of 2014. And dude, had him. He and his wife and child moved to Chattanooga just 4 months later, and so I met him through Larry Ebersold. I met him through New Riff and Brian Sprance. So. Wow,
that's incredible. And so tell me about the inception of the, as we're gonna get into the whiskey here, I've been sipping on the 111, which is, I've gone through a couple of bottles a little bit too quickly, just to let you know, Tim. It's a little bit dangerous, the 111, because it does not drink like 111.
Yeah.
And honestly, there is a little bit of youth you pick up in here, but I think what it's brought to the table when it comes to the different types of malts that are in here. And guys, you talk about transparency. If any of you guys have never seen a bottle on this, on the back of the bottle, they tell you exactly what type of grain is in here. So the 111 has a mash bill of yellow corn malted rye, caramel malted barley, and honey malted barley. You say the exact age, the cooperage that it's aging in, the batch size, you give it all. And I think the high malt is definitely something unique. Now, that's what I wanted to ask you about. That was my number one question. Why high malt? How did you guys arrive at that decision? Was that purely a decision on Grant McCracken's? Was that an idea of his, just breaking the rules of a traditional bourbon? How did you come to that, and how long did it take to kind of perfect the recipe?
Right. So, perfecting the recipe was just a really long process of putting as many different versions of what we call Tennessee High-Malt away over a several year period. Right. So I wouldn't say that we have necessarily ever perfected anything, although 91 was certainly our favorite, and we felt like it was the best thing that we thought it was the best thing since sliced bread, and we thought it was significantly better than the the LDI that we had been originally selling. So there's two I guess parts. You got the how we came up with it, and then you got how we named it. So how we came up with it is we didn't want to do, we knew we wanted to do straight bourbon whiskey, but we didn't want to rip off, what everybody, what had basically already been done a million times before, right? And what we had been selling in Grant, our mission was not to just to be, rule breakers, but it was really to produce a kind of a deeper, darker, richer bourbon, right? Like that was our mission. And that's where specialty malts and utilization of colder fermentations and different toasts and chars. I mean, there's so many opportunities in the production process that start with the recipe that frankly just haven't been explored to the degree that we explored it at the experimental distillery.
We want to just say thank you real quick. Cheech Artolino came in and says, please thank Tim Piersant. Appreciate his openness and sharing of your story. And yeah, I gotta say thank you as well. You're being really open and honest, and absolutely love this stuff.
Thanks, dude. I appreciate that. And thanks, Cheech. So that's where, the introduction of specialty malts into straight bourbon whiskey. We didn't want to alienate straight bourbon whiskey, so we wanted to be a straight bourbon.
Yep.
But Grant, with Grant's background in specialty malts, Grant had a really strong feeling that specialty malts were going to add a level of richness, depth, and complexity that then you could additionally capitalize on with colder fermentations, with a specific distillation proof, with different toasts and chars, with a Solera barrel process, with, doing an unfiltered bourbon. So many opportunities to capitalize on the use of specialty malts in straight bourbon whiskey. And honestly, man, I just trusted them. This
is the best thing, and I have an idea for a T-shirt for Chattanooga. This should be on a shirt. It should say "Filtration none. Bottle occasionally captures barrel sediment." I mean, that should be on a shirt.
Our creative director might be on here right now. His name's Rich.
Rich, get on that. Just put Chattanooga Whiskey. And I don't know, something where if I myself occasionally captures barrel sediment.
I like that. That's pure, man. That's authentic.
That's authentic. I mean, that's, but that's, I think you guys, again, when you listen to bourbon drinkers of today and whiskey drinkers overall, what do we look for? We look for, something usually a little bit of a higher proof. So you get some more flavor, non-chill filtered. So you get, you got all those really good, the lipids and the fatty acids and everything that you want inside, inside the whiskey that just gives it more mouthfeel, better texture.
We definitely had some people that were like, wait a minute, you're not going to make a traditional Tennessee whiskey. You're in Tennessee. Like, you're not going to do the Lincoln County process. Like, why would you not do the Lincoln County process? And
that was a question that actually came up earlier. Someone was asking if you guys charcoal filter. I'm like, no, they do not.
We didn't want to. That's Jack Daniel's thing, and that's a Tennessee whiskey thing, obviously, and we're proud of our heritage from Tennessee. But that's where Tennessee High-Malt, that's where that came from, because we are authentically made in Tennessee. We are authentically our own thing. We're in the southeastern, mountains of Tennessee. Yeah, so the landscape kind of it speaks to the landscape, but it also speaks to what is actually happening, because we're asking ourselves, like, what is this thing that we're doing? What do we call it? And that's where Tennessee High-Malt came from.
Let's see here. Got another cool super chat from Daily Bourbon Drinker. Says, thanks to Jason for bringing more awareness to Chattanooga. Such a cool story, such a quality product, from the 91 to the 111 to the rye.
Awesome.
Absolutely. Karen before she agrees. Thank goodness, no Lincoln County process.
Hey, I didn't say that. We just really want to do our own thing, but again, we always want to nod to the past, like, we're not trying to leave the past in the dust. And that's why we do straight bourbon whiskey. We think straight bourbon whiskey and that's our thing. It's a beautiful product, but we just think that there's so many ways that you can drive flavor and complexity and richness. And we focus on every little step along the way. So it's not really this. I mean, it's historically right. It's recipe and age, right? Get it in the barrel, let the barrel go to work wherever the barrel is aging. That's the most important thing. It is very important, but it's only one flavor driving component amongst 10 or 20 flavor driving, super important flavor driving components throughout the entire distillation process.
Trev Wilson says a vote, ban chill filtration.
I like that.
Yeah, right. Let's just have that for just have that just as a universal law across the country. No, stop chill filtering shit.
So we every every election period we put out our vote whiskey all over the place, and people are always asking like, wait, I thought we voted whiskey like back in 2013. Like, are we still voting whiskey right now? And we confuse the entire city on it. We put like 100 signs out.
So tell me about the two different distilleries. So you have the experimental, which you say has a pot still. Is there a column still there as well?
So the experimental distillery is a pot still that it does have a column on it, but it's a pot still. You can call it a hybrid pot still, but it's a 100-gallon pot still with a small column that has 4 distillation plates on it. And we have 3 100-gallon fermenters. So our yield is only about 18 gallons of spirit out of 100 gallons of mash. So when you think about 3 cooks in a week, you can only produce 153-gallon barrel a week over there. So we're very restricted or limited on our capacity. So Riverfront, and that's in a really cool district. So we do all of our tourism at the Experimental Whiskey Distillery. So it's an amazing tourist attraction, one of the top-rated tourist attractions around. And so we definitely encourage anybody to come in. We're heavy on education. We have a really cool flight. And of course, you can buy things there where we're exclusively releasing experimental releases that you can't get anywhere else. But Riverfront is where we scaled up the 91 recipe to make both 91 and 111, and then about a dozen other experimental recipes that we love. And it sits only about a mile away from the experimental distillery. We don't do tours there,
okay,
but we do have an event hall there that people frequently rent out. But it's about 50,000 square feet. It can produce upwards of 3,000 barrels a year. So I mean, it's a significantly larger capacity. It's one of the larger craft bourbon distilleries around. But it is it's where it's where we store about 5,000 barrels on site there. I mean, there's a lot of this stuff actually is on our website. If people do want to explore the experimental distillery and the Riverfront distillery and look at the systems and all that stuff, we have that all on our website. So you can definitely check that stuff out. But we've got 3,000 gallon fermenters over there versus 100-gallon fermenters, over at EXP. So you're talking about, 30 times the capacity.
Well, yeah, I would imagine with the experimental, you want to keep things smaller. You're not making huge runs of anything because you're like, that's what it's there for. You're experimenting. You're seeing if what I'm making is going to taste amazing or it's going to taste like shit.
Yeah, so to this day. So we call it the only standalone experimental whiskey distillery in the country because to this day, first of all, how we came up with our recipe. And then to this day, now almost 6 years later, we have never stopped experimenting. And we have over 300 experiments that, and all of them hit the market. So.
Yeah. Patrick Fulmer says, I was a snob about the source product. Then I learned about it and it was good. I live near Chattanooga, Tennessee, and I've watched these guys grow. I have bottles of several of their products and I'm a fan. Cheers.
Awesome. Thanks, Patrick.
I got another one that came in from Whiskey Drover. It says, girlfriend picked me up a single barrel bottle in Chattanooga, and then I found a single barrel at Specs in Texas. I will never allow my cabinet to not have Chattanooga in it.
That's amazing. Thanks.
Whiskey Drover. He was saying earlier that he got a little bit of trouble because he went through a few too many bottles in a given week.
I understand. My, I grew up in a house with no alcohol in it. Of course, my parents are now, our number one fan, and they drink Chattanooga whiskey all the time. But back then, it was pretty common for people not to have alcohol in their house. But now my 9 and 7-year-old daughters know more about distilling than the average adult. So it's quite a different household than what I grew up.
I got to say, so for the only second time I'm trying your rye, the rye to me, you still keep the herbal quality of a good rye spice, a good rye whiskey. It's not, those of you guys that like dill, there's no real dill note in this rye whiskey. It is on the sweet side. You still get the malt, I think, in here as well. So you're kind of keeping that DNA throughout, all your expressions.
So by TTB definition, that is a rye malt.
A rye malt.
Correct. And so we call it Tennessee rye malt. It is obviously in the Tennessee High-Malt family, and because it has 3 specialty rye malts in it, so it's 4 grain and 3 specialty high malts, about 30% non-GMO yellow corn, and then the other 60+% is, or 30+% non-GMO yellow corn. The other 60+% is made up of 3 different specialty rye malts, including chocolate rye malt. and then it's aged for greater than 3 years. And we don't do both a 4-char and a 3-char with a toast on that. We only do a 4-char, whereas of course with 91 and 111 we use both chars and our own toast. And so what we're finding is that our rye drinks a little closer to a bourbon than it does a rye.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's definitely more on the bourbon side because, even with the 111 and the 91, I think with that caramel malted barley, the honey malted barley, you have so much of that nice high malt that's backing up that's bringing that sweetness to the table with the whiskey. Again, it's a younger whiskey, but it doesn't really feel like you're drinking a younger whiskey just because I think the sweetness and the malt kind of helps with the profile. But I love the fact that you have like these nice burnt toast notes, these honey butter notes, and you get like that. You get a little bit of a spice. You also get, I think on the 91, I got a longer finish than I would have thought for a 91 proofer. And I think that the maltiness just kind of hangs around. And I also think it's a nice creamy mouthfeel that you're getting on here. Of course, every now and then you got to pick out the barrel sediment too.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, here, and this is where we get quite a few questions about. All right, so like this doesn't taste really like a young whiskey. Why do you think that is? Of course, the recipe has a lot to do with that, but long cold fermentations, we're fermenting twice the average time, right? I mean, and that is significant. When you do a short hot fermentation, there's a lot of yeast esterification that happens. And in yeast esterification, you're creating a lot of like heavy kind of banana and some heavy banana fruit notes and some astringent notes. So what a long cold fermentation is it's really allowing the richness and complexity of the grain to shine through. And that's a really important step for us, and then of course, if we, when you taste single barrels and you taste only 4-char versus 3-char with a toast,
yep.
A toasted barrel is significantly different than a non-toasted barrel.
What are you guys going in the barrel at?
So we go in pretty low. We go in at 115.
Oh, okay.
We come off our fill at 133, and we go into the barrel at 115.
You're adding a little bit of water to it. You're gonna draw out some more sugars. You're gonna get some more of break down the barrel a little bit easier. Then cut a little more on the back end, not cut it a little bit on the front end, not the back end.
That's right, and I can tell you that even just what it goes into the barrel there's drastic flavor profile differences at what the proof is when it goes into the barrel. There's also drastic flavor profile differences at what it comes off the still at. We have tried everything from 130 to 150, and let me just tell you that like the difference between 131 and 135 is a significant difference. 135 is going to be a little cleaner and more approachable. 131 is going to be a little grungier and more it's going to have some additional depth to it. So we kind of picked in the middle at 133 to kind of get both of those worlds. You might think that this is like that. There's no way that the difference between 131 and 135 can be a huge difference, but trust me. I mean, it just at White Dog Whiskey, you can taste. I mean, if you have even like a decently refined palate, you can taste a difference.
So real quick, Will Henderson says, I'll be in the area on Friday. I planning on stopping by. He planning on stopping by. So Hendo will be walking in. Will, have a good time, buddy. Mike Baker, love that you bring guys like Tim to tell their stories. Love hearing the backstories to these new distilleries. That's what I love too. Thanks, Mike, for chiming in. Josh Randall, another super chat. I lucked out and got a private tour today at Chattanooga with Caitlin. Walked out with single barrel 77 and 104. Great stuff.
Awesome. I love it. Thanks, Josh.
Yeah, there you go. Somebody just was there today. That's awesome.
Yeah, super. Caitlin.
So real quick, not to get too deep into the weeds, but even for me, what's cold fermentation versus heated fermentation? How does cold fermentation work, and how does the yeast even activate in cold?
So yeah, there's definitely a temperature that that fermentation stops, right? The yeast just goes dormant.
Yeah.
So you got to stay above that temperature. I don't know exactly what that's a Grant question in terms of exactly what that Fahrenheit is that the yeast just completely, goes dormant. Definitely probably south of 70 degrees, but the short hot fermentation is traditional. and like non-temperature controlled fermentations is traditional. You will get you will have fermenters that, you know, when the yeast begins, you know, producing alcohol, it's producing CO2, and so it's naturally heating up. So, and it could be, you know, a hot day, it could be just, you know, heat from the yeast, but that fermenter has a tendency to get up north of 90 degrees. The hotter that fermenter gets, the faster that yeast produces alcohol. And that's been a strategy for a really long time for people, because why? They want to turn that tank over, right? They want to get the ABV up and they want to distill it as fast as they possibly can. So the target has historically been 6% alcohol by volume coming out of a fermenter, which you can get to in about 3 days at a 90+ degree fermentation. So for us, and again, this is kind of a craft beer way of doing things, but we temperature control at north of 70 degrees. So actually, it's a constant temperature that we control it at, and it's controlled at that temperature year round, and it slows that process down. It slows the yeast down. The yeast isn't producing so rapidly. It's and what happens is they're open top fermenters, so you have natural bacteria in the air. The natural bacteria in the air settles into the fermentation. It creates additional richness and complexity, and then of course you don't get as much yeast esterification because the yeast wasn't working, you know, so hard and rapidly to produce that alcohol. So, and then what happens with that is you get a lot more flavor from the grain to shine through, because, you know, with yeast esterification, that stays in the bottle for forever. I mean, when it goes in there, I mean, I can taste yeast esterification, you know, in a 10-year-old bourbon. So it's been really important. It's been a really important process to us to slow it down and not have so much yeast esterification, which has really enhanced the complexity and richness of the recipe itself.
So how much were you into whiskey before all this happened? I mean, you said you grew up in a household really with no alcohol at all.
Yeah.
So what was your personal journey like with whiskey that prompted you to want to open a distillery?
It wasn't really so much a journey with whiskey, because I mean, while I was, you know, drinking a couple of the classics, I was not a big bourbon fan before I started Chattanooga Whiskey. It was really I was born and raised in Chattanooga. My wife and I got married and moved downtown in 2005. So we were kind of a part of the beginning of the Renaissance of Chattanooga, and and so, you know, bringing something back to downtown Chattanooga, old manufacturing, you know, a historical product, all those things was really spoke to my passion for this community. And that was really my inspiration. And then along the way, you know, I'm a parrot, man. So I just listen to the people that know what they're talking about, and I figure out how to repeat it. So
you're a smart man. Actually, so this kind of leads in. So Brett Marquette says Chattanooga rum barrel finish is so good. Before we open up some other questions from the audience to learn a little bit more about, you know, Chattanooga and yourself and what's going on there, tell me about the type of stuff, if you can, the type of stuff that you're churning out, you know, with the experimental distillery, or stuff that you've done in the past that has just been, you know, knocked out of, you know, it's just completely, you know, was a complete home run, or, you know, stuff that it's even sometimes fun to hear about the failures too.
Yeah, I can tell you about a failure. It's called.
And while you're doing that, I'm gonna break open this single cask.
All right, sounds good. So
which is legit dark, by the way. It's like coffee.
Super dark.
Yeah.
So, you know, we had this thing called the Road to Tennessee High-Malt. So we've officially, even though we've produced over 300 experiments or experimental barrels, we've released over 30 of them into the market. And so right now, you know, we've gone through batch 15. We're about to release batch 16, which is a fig infused, Tennessee High-Malt straight bourbon whiskey. You know, the rum barrel was, I think it was batch 14. Batch 15 was a Tennessee High-Malt coffee liqueur. So we actually did a high malt gin, a Tennessee High-Malt gin that was finished in a Tennessee High-Malt barrel, and that was really cool. So we've done a lot. We've experimented with a lot of different finishes, a lot of different barrels, a lot of different grains. We've worked with smoked grains. In fact, the experimental single barrel that I'm drinking tonight is barrel number 78. And yeah, it's kind of Yeah, see it in there a little bit. But
did you say you make a gin? Because I don't. In the words of Ron Swanson, I don't drink alcohol from that side of the color spectrum.
yeah, no, we did an experiment. I don't blame you. But we did.
You gotta do for the hipsters. They love their gin.
Well, dude, we wanted to try it out. We did one experimental gin. It was a small, everything we do is super small batch from experimental, and it killed it. It was awesome.
Yeah.
So, but of course, it wasn't just your typical gin. It was a Tennessee High-Malt gin. So it literally came from a Tennessee High-Malt recipe, and we made a gin from a Tennessee High-Malt recipe. So
I would probably try that though.
Yeah, no, it was.
I don't think I've ever in my life had a Tennessee High-Malt gin. So just to get that experience would be kind of cool. But yeah,
I have. If you're ever in Chattanooga, I have a bottle stored away at the house. Like, I'm happy to share it.
Absolutely.
We've got we've worked with. So this one I have tonight has cherrywood smoke malt in it. So we had a cherrywood smoke malt. We've done Scottish style, like peated bourbon with Scottish style, finished in Islay barrels. Gosh, man, we've done several weeded recipes. In fact, we have a weeded recipe that we scaled up to Riverfront. And that weeded recipe will be one of the recipes in our bottled and bond that comes out in less than a year that I'm really excited about.
Here we go. I think you just said you had us.
Yeah,
you had an Islay Scotch one, right?
We did. Yeah, we had it was batch 4, and then we did a single barrel of batch 4, and that was a peated. So it was a peated bourbon using Simpson's peat malt, and then we finished it in Islay Scotch barrels. So I want to say maybe 12-year-old Islay Scotch barrels.
Oh shit! Hey, Nick Foles says we need a maple syrup finish.
Man, maple syrup finish was one of our faves, man. It was incredible. That went so fast. We still have people ask for that. It's been, and that's the beauty of the experimental. Once they're gone, they're gone. You can't get back from the dead.
There's the single cast color, guys. If you just want to
look
at that. That is that looks like maple syrup. Speaking of.
A big difference between the experimental single barrels and really anything else is that these pot still. You're making me thirsty.
Well, you got a bottle in front of you, so you're good.
I'm gonna pour it. So it's what we like. We call it grungy, but in the best way possible. Like, we like the grunge, right?
I'm actually hoping there's barrel sediment in here.
I don't know. Actually, I don't have 104 in front of me.
Wow, there's a definite, man. The nose on this is pretty
Yeah, they're wild, man. They're super, super complicated. Every single one of those is really.
I don't know if this is a real thing, but is there such a thing as like honey coated, or I should say chocolate coated, like honeycomb?
Sure, you can dip anything in chocolate, man.
Yeah, I guess so, but because I'm getting very rich honey, and I'm getting a nice chocolate, like a rich chocolate note in here.
So 104 is it's a little more classic Tennessee High-Malt recipe, I believe. It was selected by our distiller Chris Eilers. We have 8 distillers, and they've all selected and produced different recipes for us. So this is a Chris Eilers feature, and it's actually a little more on the classic side than some of our other recipes that have come out of experimental single barrel. Like this one I'm drinking right now is one of my favorites, barrel number 78.
Mm-hmm.
It has cherrywood. It's a straight bourbon whiskey. It's a Tennessee High-Malt recipe. It's got cherrywood smoke malt in it. It's got double roasted caramel malted barley in it, and it has chocolate malted barley in it as well, and it's got malted rye in it. So it's actually a 5 grain. It's pretty wild.
Dude, yeah, this thing is nuts. This is 124 proof. So this is the highest proof, whiskey I've had from you guys. This is also the oldest one, I think. This is greater than 4 years old, this one.
So all of our experimental single barrels are greater than 4.
Okay.
The one I'm drinking is, I think our oldest is maybe 4. It's high proof, bro. We've got
But I mean, it's so much sweetness too.
Yeah, it's super rich.
It's very rich on the palate. It's very candy coating, and it just keeps going and going. Like the finish on this for me is just, I could sip this all night. I'm gonna I'm going to be cherishing this freaking bottle. Holy shit. I'm
like
going to be milking this one.
Yeah, you gotta when it's 120 something proof, man. You better milk it, otherwise you're gonna.
Well, I'm known for having 3 Elijah Craig barrel proofs in one tasting, then falling out of my chair. So yeah, that happens.
I've got a few stories myself, but we'll save those when we're not live.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, DC, the Count Chocula Chattanooga High-Malt, exactly.
That's another T-shirt.
That's another No, I already thought of the T-shirt. Ready? 95% Chattanooga whiskey, 5% sediment.
We've Larry Ebersole created the 95.5 recipe, the famous 95.5 recipe. So.
Yeah, now you guys are going to have the Tennessee 95.5, only it's going to be Chattanooga whiskey and then some barrel sediment in there.
I don't know if we'll ever, Grant is, and this is what I love about Grant, like, he's like, no, 95.5 has already been done. We're not doing that. I mean, he is truly a purist, and, but also we're always trying to connect to the greater audience as well, not just be, a couple of wild and crazy guys.
And in that mindset, I gotta say, let's talk price. You guys, being a craft distillery, brought out 3 very accessible whiskeys that aren't, going to blow, your pocketbooks out of the water. I think to that end, listen, when you talk about, when you run through just the amount of craft whiskey distilleries that have, that are out there today, and the amount of stuff that's on the shelf. You see stuff that's on the shelf. Some tell you it's MGP, some tell you it's their own stuff, but either way, you're going to sometimes pay 50, 60, sometimes $100 for it. You guys had a very smart pricing strategy where I think you made this stuff very accessible. You have something for a lower proof fan, and then you also have something for the fan like the more experienced whiskey drinker, where you could bring in a 111 proof whiskey that's non-chill filtered, maybe catch some sediment in there and enjoy it, but not also, have to pay a lot of money for it.
Yeah. So that's part of our mission, which is whiskey to the people.
Yep.
And it's not very whiskey to the people, in our opinion, to be basically born by the community, because we wouldn't be here without the community support, and then turn around and sell them $100 bottle. Right. So while we put a lot into our products, a lot that I think would warrant a higher price point, we wanted to offer it at a price point that we felt like was not cheap, but that was really approachable by the everyday, just the average consumer, and that's why we priced 91 at a little over $30, around $30. We priced 111 at around $40. And, some cities, some markets might be on the higher end of 40s, and some actually break into $39.99, which I even struggle with. I'd love to see it at like $44.99 everywhere I go, but that's another story. I'm not going to get into pricing strategy beyond what we're talking about. But so 30s, 40s, Ooh. Experimentals are $69.99, and so we try to stay between 30 and 70 in everything that we do, and that's because it's whiskey to the people to us. So,
which I think is the mindset of a lot. There's a lot of, huge distillers that do have a lot of, products that are, on the shelf usually and very affordable. But to see it from a craft whiskey producer, I think it's always a special thing when you see that. So I was very surprised when these hit Ohio and I saw them on the shelf for the price that they were, especially after hearing the noise I was hearing about, hey, Chattanooga, you got to try it. And then I expected to see a $60 to $70 bottle on the shelf. I was very surprised when this was only $30 and the other one was, like you said, about 40 and change.
Yeah.
Whiskey Tornado threw in a super chat, says I did a review of 111 when I started my channel. Was blown away to get a DM from Tim thanking me. What a great guy and great whiskey. Cheers, guys.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yes, Whiskey Tornado. If you haven't checked out his channel, please do. That's Lance. We got Stanley Wags. The Wags is here. How do I get the Mash and Drum hat? Also, how do we contact him about helping to get the word out here in Cali?
How do I get the Mash and Drum hat? So one of the cool things for us has been Sealbox, and so that's you can actually go through our website and get to sealbox.com, We've established a really good relationship with Blake over there, who is also behind, Bourboner, and he's a good dude, and he's been a Chat Whiskey supporter since the very beginning, and so we can ship to Cali through Sealbox, and so anyways, I would definitely go to our website. California is our largest largest consumer of online whiskey shopping, and so get a lot of people from California, man. So definitely go check that out. And as far as getting the word out, I don't know, share this.
Thanks, Richie. Appreciate it, man. As far as the hats go, the company that I work with here in Columbus is actually making a new batch for me because I can't keep them in stock. They sell fast. The hats, more than anything, go really quick. So it's almost on like a waiting list right now. So, but the next batch I get in, Tim, I will definitely send you one.
I'll trade you.
Oh, that sounds good to me, man. I'll do a straight up trade. Yeah, pricing is as reasonable as hell. Absolutely. Mike Franklin comes in. Whiskey to the people, words to live by. I wish I could find it in Washington State. Hey, you're pretty close to Cali. Have someone mule it for you.
I think Sealbox ships to Washington, if I'm not mistaken. Don't quote me. I'm not 100%, but they might.
All right, Mike, check Sealbox. All right, guys. So why don't you, anybody that has any other questions, start putting them in now before we start rounding it out for Tim before he freezes to death.
The whiskey's keeping me warm.
Yeah. So Tim, while the questions are coming in, when you're not drinking Chattanooga, what do you like drinking? What are you sipping on sometimes? Or is it cocktails, is it beer, is it other whiskeys? What are you sipping on?
No, I have kind of like a strategy that I live by now that I've got kids that are 9 and 7, and I've got some extra things to be responsible for in my life. I pretty much stick to straight whiskey and lagers, right? I used to love IPAs. I always had IPAs in my refrigerator, but I can't drink it all. So now I'm just a straight whiskey and lager guy. I drink Chattanooga pretty much 90+% of the time. I used to have a lot of 4 Roses single barrel in my house. I used to have I had a lot of stuff from Buffalo Trace and Sazerac in the house. I had E.H. Taylor and all that stuff, and it's all really good stuff. I don't have a bad thing to say about any of it, of course. And it's all inspired us to do what we're doing. Personally, I like to drink. I like to sip neat. I like to sip with 1 cube. I like to sip with 2 cubes. I like to sip with a little bit of water. I like to sip with a whiskey ginger on the lake in the summer. Like I like to do all of that stuff almost equally. And when I put ice on Chattanooga whiskey, because it's got those specialty malts in it, it really opens up the product and not just ice, but just water too. It opens up the product in a really, really nice way because of all those complex grains and flavors that are inside there. Whereas with a traditional straight bourbon whiskey, if you put ice on it, it can kind of become too sweet to sip over time. Ice really enhances the sweetness of a straight bourbon whiskey. So what I like is that this deeper, darker, I kind of like to equate Chattanooga whiskey to we're like the dark chocolate to the everyday straight bourbon whiskey's milk chocolate. And so when you, or like a dark roast coffee, right? So if
there you go.
Yeah. So we're more in line with that. So you put a cube on it or a little bit of water in it, it just expresses itself really nicely. And so because I like to drink in all those different ways, I've kind of hung up all my old staples like 4 Roses single barrel, and I've just moved to drinking Chattanooga whiskey. Not to mention, I keep a bottle of every experimental single barrel or every experimental that we've ever done. And so it's really fun. I mean, dude, it's like truly exploring the rainbow. I mean, the rainbow of bourbon, the rainbow of specialty malts and bourbon. I mean, just diving into all of it is really fun.
Wow, Tim, your job sucks, man.
Hey, man, it's after a long, hard day. It's fun to comb through what you've done.
Yeah, I mean, listen, that's all. I can't, I'm not gonna, it's a little bit of a jealousy shade, but at the same time, I can't, I can't say anything and can't say enough about your success and, you know, what you guys have built. So that's awesome. Actually had a quick question from Chris Stormer, was a question that I was going to ask because I think it's pretty cool. Where did the bottle design come from?
Man, it is a long, so we put so much, I just feel like we go so deep in just about everything we do. So Rich Abercrombie, our creative director, was our first hire, which by the way, is a strange, that's great.
That's Scott from My Bourbon Journey. He has a great channel. He's a really good buddy of mine. He needs to, he needs to review some Chattanooga.
I love that, man. I love that. So this is kind of funny, actually. I think, Jason, you'll appreciate this, but you know how everybody's kind of moving towards a tall, skinny bottle?
Yeah, the wine bottle look. Yep.
Yeah, right. So when we came out, 1816, when it was LDI, it was a short, squatty bottle. And a short, squatty bottle, we were kind of like, it was called the Kaleido bottle. That was called the design back then.
Yeah.
And a lot of people started using the Kaleido bottle. I mean, a lot. Like, I mean, you could list off a number of brands. Like Templeton Rye used the Kaleido bottle. So the Kaleido bottle was really popular. And when we went to create our custom glass, we wanted to honor the Kaleido bottle because that was the bottle that we started in.
Mm-hmm.
So we went and created, and then we put all this ribbing in the neck that you can see. So this ribbing right here, here and up here, that was all, and the bubble in the neck, that was all inspired by pre-Prohibition. So that was it's a pre-Prohibition style. Of course, the embossing was really popular pre-Prohibition as well.
The embossing is probably my favorite part of the bottle. If you guys want to see this, the close up here, you can see it says "Made in Chattanooga, Tennessee," and it's embossed in the bottle, which is just a really good, nice callback to Chattanooga. So
Rich was our first hire, and he's our creative director, which was a strange first hire, I know, to go and hire a creative director as your first hire when you're not even like really making anything, but. He and I just really wanted to nod to the past and be traditional and progressive, and that's where that came from. So while everybody else is now really tall, we're really short, and we're cool with that.
Yeah, that's actually probably a smart move. It definitely sticks out on the shelf, I will say, especially with that embossing. Let's see, Patrick Fulmer. Any plans for tours of the riverfront? I've driven by it.
So if Jason, if somebody reaches out to you and they're like one of your followers and they want a tour, like connect them with me and I'm happy to give them a tour.
Okay.
And I really mean that. I enjoy giving, just tours of friends and consumers. But it's not available. So right now it's closed to the public. Strictly production, and an event hall is attached to it as well. But yes, we literally talked about it today. I mean, we're trying to figure out how to do it. It's just right now, man, we've been distilling there for a little over 3 years, and we're just it's a complicated operation, and we're trying to press the brakes on bringing thousands of people through there. So one day soon.
Well, I mean, I know you guys are probably. A lot of people want to see the inner workings of what happens, but if you guys haven't seen the experimental, front yet, and actually how that looks, that place is amazing. So if you can't go to, the big, huge, riverfront facility just yet, the experimental distillery is beautiful. Team Chardolino says, not sure how you get these guests, but this stream has been in education, all things Tennessee whiskey and distillers who care about end users. I got to say, Tim reached out to me. He saw the review and was willing to come on. And I said, hey, listen, if you're going to come on, we're going to get nerdy. So he was willing to come on. And now he's sitting out in the cold with Christmas lights over his head, freezing his ass off, talking to you guys. So
yeah, it's keeping me energized. So
let's see here. Could you ask Tim if all the single barrel store picks are all the same recipe, or do they differ based on what the store picks is? Okay.
Yeah, so single barrels are a touchy subject for us because we don't do a lot of them, and we get a fair amount of requests for them. And so, and it's just, they're really, with everything that we're doing, it's just, they're really, it's a pretty significant burden. So we only did 26 single barrel picks this year outside of the experimental single barrels that we release at the distillery. And so, yes, no, they are 100% chosen by the account. You will see single barrels out there because, again, we blend a 4-char and a 3-char with a toast together to make 91 and 111. For single barrels, they're truly single barrels. So you will see some 4-chars and you'll see some 3-chars with the toast out there. So they're different proofs, truly unique, from one another, and 100% chosen by the accounts.
What are some flavor profiles that you like in bourbons? That question's coming from DC. He's just going to say, you know what? Chattanooga.
Well, again, I mean, for me, when I was drinking more traditional bourbons than what we make in Tennessee High-Malt, what I enjoyed about going from that to what we are now is that you get those specialty malts are roasted, toasted grains. That's what specialty malts, right? You're taking a grain, you're steeping it in water, you're germinating it, you're kilning it, and when you're killing it, you're roasting it, you're toasting it, you're caramelizing it, you can smoke it, you create hundreds of different specialty malts. And those specialty malts are roasted, toasted, so they're darker grains. They're going to create darker aroma, darker flavor profile. When you add that to the sweetness of the vanilla and caramel traditional notes that you get in bourbon, it creates something that's really rich and dark and complex, and that's what I've now gravitated towards.
Scott CA came in with a $4.99 super chat. Thank you so much. Says, cheer guys from your California fans, the Pleasant Valley Bourbon Club. There you go.
Yeah, dude. We had a great time doing a Zoom with those guys. That's awesome.
Jason D says, I have 2 the single barrels, and they are amazing. And then he spelled it out. He liked it so much.
Thanks, Jason.
That takes a lot of time to spell that shit out. So you got to really like it.
I love it.
So you're a drummer like I am. So I'm going to challenge you with a quick question here.
All right, sweet.
If Chattanooga Whiskey was a drummer, what drummer would Chattanooga Whiskey be?
Oh man.
I'll let you think on that a little bit.
No, I mean, dude, I'm gonna oof. Whoa.
I just like he went from cold to real hot right now.
I wanted to go like I wanted to go Tony Royster Jr., right? Because he's so complex.
Yeah.
And
Trev Wilson has been he has his own channel, the Bourbon Wrench. We call him the Bourbon Wrench because he pretty much mods most of the 99.9% of the channels on YouTube. He keeps the assholes out of the chat rooms, and he's also a drummer, so he's gonna love this.
All right, here's what I'm gonna say. I wanted to say Tony Royster Jr. because he's so good and he's so complex, and we really pride ourselves on details and complexity. But he's like a solo artist, right? I mean, he's a solo artist, and he's a studio drummer, right? So I'm gonna go Danny Carey. So I'm gonna say Danny Carey of Tool, because Danny Carey of Tool was in a genre, but they took a genre and they made it their own thing, but yet he was still really technical. And I would say that's probably the closest thing to Chattanooga Whiskey.
Yeah, I was also going to go with a progressive style drummer, because when you think Chattanooga breaking the rules a little bit, being a little bit off, and you're talking about a little bit off time.
Yeah. Yep.
I would definitely I could go with that. I could go with Danny Carey. That's a pretty good choice. That's solid, man.
We're definitely not Carter Beauford.
Yeah, definitely not Carter Beauford. No. No. A little baby. No, I don't want to do that.
Rotten Trios.
Oh my god.
Dude, my creative director will bust that out just randomly. He'll be sitting over there designing, and he'll be like, Trotting Trios.
Trotting Trios. You should, if you do tours, you should do that on every tour. Oh my god, I almost coughed up my bourbon. Justin Jonas says, your story and passion for your product are inspiring, Tim, and I'm sure you've earned many dedicated customers tonight. Cheers to you, Master Drum. Thank you, Justin. Oh, that was fucking awesome.
That's awesome.
Cohen says, I think you're more Terry Bozzio because you do so many different things.
Hey, Terry, yeah, man. He's I don't know. Terry Bozzio has too big of a kit for me. I remember, I mean, you probably went through this phase, but at one point I had like a 12-piece kit, and then it just slowly but surely went down to like 3 pieces. You know, it was like I went from like a 5 to a 12, and then down to 3.
I think Richie Z, he's really into music. He wanted to know what types of cymbals you like to play on.
I use pretty much hand-hammered Sabians.
Yeah. Yeah, I use a mix of Sabians and actually pasties.
I have a couple of pasties as well. Yeah, I like that. They're great.
They're just more. I have a pasty China. It's just more. Aggressive. It's just more aggressive sounding, and I love it.
Pasty makes an awesome China. I've had a hand hammered Sabian hi hat since I was a kid, and I've just loved it.
Great to be about 30 minutes from Chattanooga Whiskey. Have about 24 bottles of their offering. Rarely I'm disappointed in the bottles. Tim is killing it. There you go, Jacob.
Wow. Thanks, Jacob. That's
amazing. Look at that. 24. Holy shit.
That's a lot.
Yeah, that is a lot. Let's see. Any idea when this will be in the Chicago area? You guys working out? You got, what'd you say?
Just launched. Yep.
Just launched, so keep an eye on Chicago. Are you guys, you guys getting in the binnies or what?
Yep, we're not in all of them, but we're in a handful of binnies.
Jason Lamp request: bring your whiskey to Iowa. There you go. There's another Midwest state you got to get in.
I just did something with one of the mayors in Iowa. And anyways, he was a super cool dude, and he's a big Chat whiskey fan. So we're getting some pool in Iowa, I guess.
Let's see here. Trev Wilson says, I'm a death metal drummer. My kit's still pretty big. Also, I play Sabians. Yeah, I love Sabians.
I mean, Sabian has a pretty wide range. You know, they got some stuff that's obviously on the cheaper, less expensive side, but then they have some stuff that's really nice too.
All right, so I guess with that, before I let you go, I guess to kind of end things, is there anything you could talk about as far as what's coming up for you guys? Any plans in the pipeline that you're able to talk about, or what do you got coming up from Chattanooga?
So we're going to be launching a barrel finishing series, which of course we've already been doing barrel finishings for for quite a while, but we're going to be launching an official barrel finishing series that will go into distribution, and that comes out. Our first launch is going to be a tawny port finish, and that comes out in Q1, maybe the end of Q1 of next year, and then that will be followed by a bottled and bond, which is a very special kind of specific bottled and bond. We'll have 2 vintages a year. We'll have a spring vintage and a fall vintage. So we will launch with our fall vintage in 2021, and it's not going to be your typical bottled and bond, of course, but it is Tennessee High-Malt, and it's going to be really cool.
Wow, a Tennessee High-Malt finished in port.
Tennessee High-Malt finished in port, tawny port.
Tawny port.
For the barrel finish, for the kickoff of the barrel finishing series, and then every year we'll have multiple finishes, and that's just going to be the first one.
That's awesome. I can't wait to try that. I would love to chase this stuff with a port finish. That sounds great. Mike Portnoy is the MPG of drummers. He is in everything. Yeah. Well, MGP. Yeah. I know what he meant. He is in everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's really exciting. I'm curious to see how this would do with a finish. I know you guys did some experimental stuff with finishing, but to actually have a nationally distributed product that you can get with the finish on it, I think that'd be pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean, again, man, I would love for you to come to Chattanooga and we can dive into some of the stuff in my cabinet. We keep some archives on everything, and so we can you can really explore the different, the different finishes, the maple syrup finish and the Isle of Scotch finishes. And
I'll tell you what, once all this shit calms down and we get into next year, what I'll do is maybe I could set up something with some of the viewers, maybe some of my Patreons. We could kind of do a meetup down there in Chattanooga and, get to meet you and try some whiskey and, keep it not too crazy, but, just like a nice group.
It'd be amazing, man. We have some great hotels right around us, and we get rates at all those hotels. So,
hotels! I thought we were all going to stay in your basement with all your different, all your fucking collection of bottles that you had.
You can stay in my basement, but it's a crawl space. So, good luck.
All right, man. Well, yeah, that sounds like a plan. I think, yeah, we could probably work that out. I'll connect you with my buddy Will Henderson here, Hendo, which we call him. I think he's going to be visiting you real soon. Maybe you guys can hook up and give him a nice little tour. So that'd be great.
Sweet. Well, dude,
so with that, man, I want to thank you for coming on, Tim. This was an absolute blast. Thanks for coming on and being so open and answering the questions and sharing this amazing whiskey. And, thanks for this experimental single barrel. That's freaking off the hook. I'm going to be nursing on that and definitely putting some Instagram posts about this and some notes and how much I love your stuff. And yeah, what can I say? Thank you so much, man. This was awesome.
Well, dude, let me return thanks because honestly, when I saw your review of Chattanooga Whiskey, it came to me a little bit by surprise, and just the level of depth that you go into, your research that you do, your authenticity. I mean, that's the thing, man. I mean, right? There's like how many judging panels are out there? How many competitions are out there? How many reviewers are out there? There's a lot. But the more you can, like, the more research you do, and and the more you can be yourself, the more we appreciate it. And that's what we saw in you, and we really appreciate that. And that's the reason I reached out. So, but I'm super flattered at what you think of our product, and even just taking the time to review our product. You obviously have a super loyal following, which is just badass. And I would love to have a party with every single person on this entire chat board right here. You, me, and this entire chat board in Chattanooga. Now, let's go.
Yeah, man. If we, you know what, we'll make that happen. We'll do something in Chattanooga, hopefully in the summer. But that would be freaking sick. But I appreciate you saying that, because the work and the research I put into all my reviews is something that I hold true to everything I put into the videos, but also being myself and just giving you an honest review. And if I thought your whiskey was shit, I would say it, but I just think it's really freaking good. So
awesome.
So yeah, give my best to Grant McCracken. He definitely made a friggin' badass product. I will let you know when the hats come in and we can do a little trade.
I'd love that, man.
All right, man. And for you guys, thanks for all the super chats tonight. Thanks for hanging out. And as I always say, it's not about the whiskey, it's the people you share it with, just like the folks from Chattanooga. So I will see you guys next week right here on the Master and Drum. Take care, everybody.
See you, man. Cheers.
Cheers.